Oh, can you hear me?
Can.
Great.
Okay, welcome everyone to our candidate training. This evening we have joining us Becca Congdon, and I'll be especially appreciative to her because if you don't know Becca, she lives in Texas, and it has been it's been a little touch and go to make sure that she is able to join us and have internet and power and have lights on and all of that kind of thing. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Becca. You can introduce yourself with your job title and let people know what you are going to be training them in. And while you're doing that, I'm going to pass over host duties to you.
Perfect. Thank you. Yes, my name's Becca, and I am in San Antonio, which is kind of the weird epicenter of this winter vortex that is happening right now. This is not common for Texas. I am originally from Chicago, so this is not the most unfamiliar territory for me. However, it's very much something that we are not typically equipped for down here. So my house has actually been without power for the last 3 days, and last time I was there, it was about 30 degrees in there. So I am at a friend's house. This is not exactly the setting or the week that I would normally anticipate doing something like this in, but it's definitely super exciting to get to be here and to share some information. I hope it is valuable. I'm seeing things saying that Kara's still the host, so I'm just gonna keep going through this until that might change. But what we're going to be talking about tonight, what I'm going to be hopefully giving you some good information on, is raising money through email appeals, and how to craft those appeals in the best way to get people to donate to you. And it looks like I can screen share now, so I'm going to give this a go. This shouldn't be too difficult. Can everyone see that? I don't know who can answer, but I'm just going to assume that it can be seen. So,
yes.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, and I'm going to see if I can get through here. So there we go. So I am the development associate and the appeals manager for the National Party. And before I came on to the National Party, I had been involved with the LP at different levels from about 2014 was when I first got started, as a county secretary first, then as a county chair, and then moved into a lot of different levels of involvement. Started kind of just finding ways that I could be useful, which happened to be a lot of social media work, graphic design, stuff that I didn't necessarily do professionally by any means, but that I had a fair amount of just skill to be able to figure it out. So kind of just continued working in that, and to the point where now I'm actually the vice chair of the Libertarian Party of Texas, and then was hired as the development associate for the National Party in October of 2019. So before that, I had a fair amount of Libertarian Party experience. I didn't necessarily have development experience or specifically fundraising experience beyond the ways that I sort of just had to pick up along the road. So especially when I was working on a gubernatorial campaign, I definitely picked up and did some fundraising, but it was not my primary focus. And so coming into this role was already some fresh territory for me, but to compound that, 2020 was really my first year in this role. So that was a year unlike any other year, and there was a lot of kind of new ground to sort of figure out how to fundraise during a pandemic, during times when your typical events and things like that couldn't continue. And we basically planned and canceled events all year long because there was always just hoping that something would change. And so it was definitely an interesting year, but I say all that really just to say that most of what I know and what I've learned has been just learning through the work that I've done in this role. I did take a course on fundraising, and I did use the information that I got from that in my first ever appeal that I wrote, which for reasons that may have been related to that training or not, was probably one of the least successful appeals that I ever wrote. But it still was, it was interesting information. It was helpful to see in action what things worked and what things didn't. But everything that I'll be sharing is really from my experience, what has worked and what hasn't worked. And so I'm really going to go into a few things not to do, a few things to definitely do, and then wrap up with kind of some miscellaneous things as well. So the first things, the don'ts. And these are ones that I will say maybe took me a little longer to pick up on than maybe they should have. I was a bit of a writer before I got into this position, and I've written things, short stories, poetry, those kinds of things. That is not the kind of writing that brings in money. So even while I have a great enjoyment for certain more flowery and poetic kinds of writing, I really had to learn how to resist the urge to do that and really focus on the kind of writing that will bring in money. So the first thing that I say is don't show off vocabulary. What I mean by that is obviously you don't want to dumb things down. You don't want to make things where people feel like you're talking down to them. But if you start throwing in all of those college words that we like to use sometimes, you're going to find yourself not getting as much of a response from your appeals as you want. What I always say is if someone has to stop and get a dictionary to get through your appeal, they're just not going to. They're not going to keep reading. They're not going to make it to the all important ask. And so keeping things much more simple, keeping things easy to read, especially if somebody is at work on a Monday morning, getting an email from you, scrolling through their phone, make it something that's going to quickly grab them and pull them in, and not something that they feel like is going to be more of an effort to read. Same thing with long sentences. Again, this is from my own experience. I'm a bit of a show off. I know that about myself. I'm a bit of a show off when it comes to writing, because that's the authors that I read. This is how I learned to write, and I really had to learn to not try to craft the most clever sentence. That's not the point here. The point is to get the information across in a way that people will digest it easily and turn that into giving you money. So that's my first don't. The second one is don't skip out on editing. This is hugely important. And this is something that for me personally is when I'm not the one who's writing an appeal that goes out from the National Party, I am the editor for it. So I'm either the one who's written it or I'm the one editing it. But if I wrote it, it's going to go through, at least for me, 2 other people before it goes out anywhere else. Editing is incredibly important, and it may not seem like a do or die kind of thing, but it really can be for some people. And I'll speak for myself that if I get a letter from someone who's asking me to contribute money to something and it's got typos in it, or it has, capitalizations missing, simple things like that will make me cynical enough to be, I'll have the thought enter my head, like, they're not even careful with an email that they're sending out. Are they going to be careful with the money that I give them? Those are things that don't need to happen. You don't need to have those mistakes in there to deter someone from potentially giving you cash. So be sure to, if you're the one writing the appeals for your own campaign, which most of us are when we're running as candidates, have somebody who you can send it to before it goes out, so that that it is it's being, what's getting to people is accurate and clean and clear. And I apologize, I've got a few people that I don't know if I need to do anything with this. They're in the waiting room, so I think I'm admitting people properly. Okay, I think we're good now. Apologies if I missed anyone before. So don't skip out on the editing. Make sure that other eyeballs get onto it before it goes out to your list. And the next one, the last one in this category of things not to do, is don't write a novel. This is incredibly true. And I wish I had looked this up beforehand because I'm going to get the quote wrong. But there is a quote that was actually in a letter that someone wrote that said, "I apologize for the length of this letter. I didn't have the time to make it shorter." And I feel that so much when I'm writing appeals. Like sometimes brevity is actually the more difficult thing because there's so much that we want to convey. And it's easy to sort of throw spaghetti at the wall, so to speak, and just get everything out of your head, write it all down into an appeal. If you've got pages and pages that you're sending out to people, and at the very end of it, you're asking them for money, you're actually not going to get the chance to ask them for that money because they're not going to make it there. We are a world constantly on the go. We are short on time no matter what is going on. And so it definitely is an art and a skill to learn to say what you need to say in fewer words than you probably want to say them with in the first place. So so definitely just keep that in mind. Remember, people are reading your emails most of the time on their phone. The scrolling, if they feel like they've been scrolling all day long, like, I mean, that's just what we do. We scroll until we get bored and we go somewhere else and we scroll something else. So you don't want to leave out important information. You don't want to make it so short that you're not actually communicating anything. I would say the sweet spot is probably somewhere north of 250 words, but definitely south of 700 words. So I don't have a perfect, this is how many words you want to have in there. And there's not going to be a right answer for every single situation. But always err on the side of taking out the fluff. If you feel like you're doing that thing that we used to do when we were writing school reports and, you know, you're kind of restating things a few different times to try to take up space, don't do that. Resist the urge. Get rid of the stuff that just kind of is filler. And keep your appeals on message and short enough that people will actually get through them. So those are my first don'ts. And then we move into the do's, if I'm doing this correctly. Oh, there we go. So the do's and the things that I think is really important to do on any kind of an appeal. The first one is to definitely ask people to give to a specific cause or a specific need. People really like to know where their money is going. You can do general asks. You can ask people, you know, I need money for my campaign. And you'll get some response from that. You know, there are going to be people who either know you or, you know, are invested in the party enough to where they're willing to give money just more generally. But I've definitely experienced far more success when you can say the money that you give today is going to go towards purchasing 500 yard signs, or it's going to go towards 10,000 door hangers or a literature drop or whatever it is that you're working on. It really, I mean, if you just think about what you like to spend your money on and what you like to give money towards, it's so much easier to get someone to part with some of their cash if they can see, if they have a tangible thing, I know that this is going to help this thing right here. And it's also, it's giving people the chance to really, you know, to say like, I may not be that interested in giving towards, you know, to get a billboard up or something, but I want you to get your signatures that you need to get on the ballot. And you're going to need some volunteers and maybe you're going to be paying some of those people too. So I want to make sure that I'm giving you that cash, like giving them different things where they can give towards a specific need is always going to result in a better overall outcome. So that's the first do. The second one, stay positive and stay principled. This is something that especially, I mean, this is politics. It's not ever going to be completely kind, completely positive with nothing negative to say, because if we had nothing negative to say about the people who were running against them, we probably wouldn't be running against them. It's important to not attack people based on just what party they're in or anything about them personally. Obviously, we don't want to get into gross mudslinging. That's just not the game that we're here to play. But you do have to obviously point out the things that you think that your opponents are doing wrong or would do incorrectly and point out how you'd be different. But don't make the focus of your email your opponents. Don't give them more energy, more time than they deserve. The focus is on you and your campaign and the ways that you're able to serve your constituents better. So focus on those positive things, focus on the good that you and that libertarian principles can bring to the race that you're running for. And, you know, we always say that most people are libertarians, they just don't know it yet. If that's true, then libertarian principles are things that we should be focused on. And we have a great platform. You have unending amounts of content to pull from when you're sticking to our principles. And so that's just something that I always kind of try to remember, you know, especially I mean, since I came on in this job, obviously Trump was president, and then we just had a pretty contentious election, and now Biden's in office, and we feel that obviously Biden isn't necessarily doing things well either. It is so easy to jump to just focusing on the negatives, and that's spending more time focusing on your opponents than it is actually on your solutions. So be solution oriented, be positive, and be principled. Stay on what libertarians, what we agree on, and what the things are that we kind of have this roadmap to where we want to go with the platform. So sticking to those kinds of things more than just tearing down your opponent or focusing on your opponent's shortcomings is an overall better attitude and atmosphere to have when you're going into asking for money as well. So, and then the last do is make a very clear ask and don't be shy. And this is something that you just have to know as a candidate. It's one of the first things that you have to get comfortable with is just being really bold in what you're asking for. When I first came on with the National Party, that was really one of my biggest concerns because, as you saw earlier with my past LP experience, what I hadn't had to do a lot of was just specifically ask people for money. And I knew that development was mostly fundraising. And so I was definitely concerned that I wasn't going to be very good at that. But that was a skill that I really think that the way that you pick it up is you just do it. You just got to start doing it and do it until it's not weird anymore. And sometimes for us and for candidates, that means, you know, getting on the phone and, you know, calling people and doing those kind of more cold call asks. A lot of times they're warm calls because you know that they're people who are involved in the party already. But then in the emails, do not beat around the bush. Don't say, you know, oh, if you wouldn't mind, consider this. Like, no, you know what you need. You need cash to make this happen. You need this much money to run this campaign, or you need this much money to buy these signs. Will you please today push the button, click the link, and help this campaign today? Especially when if you're doing any kind of a longer email, which again, you know, be careful with those. You don't want to go on and on. But if you have something where there is enough content that you need to kind of make it a little bit longer than your general appeals, putting in two options, one closer to the top for them to click on. If they're convinced earlier on, don't make them wait till they get to the bottom. Give them an option like, can you help us today? Whatever it is. But make it really easy. Really, really easy for them to donate. You don't want someone to have to click a link and then when they get there, it's actually like a page before where they need to go. The easiest thing that you can, or whatever is the easiest way that you can possibly have for them to be able to give to you, where it's a one click and they're there. The button's prominent, it's bright. These things may seem obvious, but it's so easy to miss out on opportunities for donations just because you weren't quite as direct, or you maybe hid the link a little bit. Whatever you can do to make it easier, that's what you want to do. So those are my do's. And the last thing that I have is really just some more miscellaneous things. After you get the most important things not to focus on, the most important things to focus on, this is where you can go from there. Right now, if you're starting for the first time, focus on the last two slides. Make sure you're crafting those emails that aren't too busy, aren't too long. You're getting to the point, you're staying positive, you're making the ask really direct and making it really easy. If you get those things down, you're going to start seeing money come in. You're going to start seeing some results there. The other things that I would just throw in there for the end would be clear branding. Most candidates, I think, for the most part, we still kind of incorporate the libertarian logo or colors or anything like that. Whether or not you're doing that, just know what branding you're going with and stick with that. Don't send them something where it looks like a different candidate every time that you send something out. The more that you can be clean and clear and get them to remember, oh, I've seen this before. That's the other thing, is that, like, for whether it's in asking for donations or in sales or whatever, people have to see something over and over again. I believe it's actually 7 times is scientifically proven to be the number of times that people need to see things before they'll actually act on it. But if they start realizing, oh, I've seen this person on Facebook, oh, I've gotten a few of these emails, that's really helpful. So be really clear with your branding. Pictures are fantastic. Pictures, as they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words, and we want to keep our emails short. So if you can include pictures, not all the time, but when there's something important, when you have successfully turned in your signatures, or when you have gotten your first billboard up or your first load of signs out or whatever it is, document that, send a picture, show them that you're being successful with the money that you have already brought in. If they didn't give to that last time, but they see that, oh, you've actually done the thing you said you were going to do, that's an easy way then to be able to turn that around and say, well, I know that they're going to be good with the money that I give them. So there you go. Break up text walls. Again, I've mentioned a number of times not to make your emails too long, but again, if you're having one that needs to be a little bit longer, break it up just so that it doesn't feel as long. Whether that means putting a picture in line with the text somewhere, even if it's just, you can have a dividing line between different subjects, break some up with bullet points, whatever it is. For someone's eyes alone, just psychologically, if they see just pages and pages of text, you kind of lost them already. If there's something aesthetically different in there, if something that breaks it up and something that makes them intrigued to see, oh, well, what are the bullet points about? I need to read the before thing so I can get there. Anything like that. We don't think about those things really consciously. We're not aware that we're doing that. But if you just went to a website and you saw just wall to wall text, you're looking for the bold, you're looking for something that can be there. So highlight, bold, underline, whatever you can do to break things up a little bit is going to increase people's ability to actually get through your email. A guest writer is something I really like taking advantage of. You do not want to overdo this, but it's something that I think is really at the right time, it can be really helpful. So if you had someone who made you a really large donation, that might be someone to ask about if they'd be willing to tell people why they donated to you and help convince people to donate to you as well. Oftentimes it works better that you kind of will write up something and then you send it, ask them if they're happy with it. Do they want to tweak anything, add their name to it at the end. Your state chair could be a good person for this, your LNC rep, somebody else that you just happen to know, whether that's, a national staff member, or it is somebody in your community that is supporting you, and someone who is well known and someone whose name would mean something to other people. That's definitely a great opportunity for that as well. And then the last thing that I said there is that it's all about you. It's not really, but what I mean by that is one of the big mistakes that I made at the beginning was writing what I think, and I would even still say, are good appeals. But maybe I'd include some facts, and I would want to kind of cite my source, as you would see in a magazine, like an online magazine article, where you say something and you link that sentence to the article where you got that information from, or the website where you got that information from. And I would end up with 5 or 6 different links actually in my appeal that were directing people away from me, away from away from the national website or anything else. And that's what you don't want to do. You don't want to send people going somewhere else. Oh, sorry. Going somewhere else and having their eyes and their attention be drawn away before they get to the end of your email, where you're going to very clearly be asking them for money. So that's just the thing to be careful about. Remember that the focus needs to always come back to your campaign, what you're doing, and what you need their money for. So it's, you know, it's great to give credit where you need to, and I'm not telling you not to do that for sure, but don't fill your email with so much of other people's links that you're going to be losing your readers before they get to the end of your email. So that is the basics of what I have. There's definitely more. There's definitely things that really just, you know, there are going to be situations that are different depending on what your focus is on. And this is an ever-changing world where things feel different week to week. And so things come up that I decide to try something new that we haven't tried before. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But so far, these are the things that I keep in mind when I'm writing any appeal for the National Party. So that's what I've got. And I know that it is time to move into questions. And I need to make sure that I know how to get this back to Kara. I'm going to try my best here.
Okay, I grabbed host back from you.
Oh, you did? Okay, good, because I didn't know how to do that.
Not a problem. Okay, so if any of you have questions, and we'll look at some of the questions that are in the chat, but if any of you have questions as well, you can go ahead and unmute and ask questions. The first question was, can you explain your use of the word appeal? Like, what are you meaning when you say that?
Sure.
What defines an appeal?
Yeah. So an appeal, at least when I'm using that word, is anytime that you are appealing for money, you are asking them for a donation. There's other things that we ask for as candidates, obviously. And I have, just to be clear, I have been a candidate once before. That's not what I am typically doing for the party, but I have done that once. So where we ask for volunteers, we ask for, you know, I don't know, people to maybe make us a website or something like that. But when I'm talking about appeals, it is, I need your money. Here's the link for you to give it to me.
Perfect. Okay. Next question is, what is the point of fundraising as a candidate, and why do you actually need money to run for office?
Oh, man. I don't know how. I mean, okay, so we have different levels of candidates, obviously. And I'm from Texas. I've discovered since getting involved at National that there's different vernacular for these things. So I think in some places it's called a paper candidate. In Texas, we call it a choice candidate, but that is essentially you're just putting your name on the ballot. You are just giving another choice than Republicans or Democrats. If that's it, if you're not doing anything beyond that, then honestly, you're not doing a very good job because you're on this call. And this call is probably for people who are doing more than that. So, but if that's all you're doing, then yeah, you probably don't need to ask for money. If you're anything else, so from that, we also have what we would call a challenge candidate. So you are just challenging whether it's an incumbent or 2 new people or whatever it is, but you're actually putting up a fight. You are challenging them. And then change candidate, I believe, is the other one. The vernacular changes, but either way, if you're doing anything more than just putting your name on the ballot, you are going to have expenses. You are going to have door hangers, rat cards, even just if you're at your house printing up a piece of paper with your information on it, that's paper, that's ink, that's the time that you spend putting that together, and then the time that that's gonna take getting volunteers out there to distribute that or to go to events and put up a booth. There's, my goodness, there's so many different things that that this money ends up being spent on. And then depending on what state you're in as well, you have the sorry, my phone's going off. you have the need to collect signatures or to pay a fee to even appear on the ballot. So that changes state to state. Right now in Texas, we are actually in kind of constant legal battles fighting the filing fees and things like that. I know that's the case for a lot of other states, but for a lot of us right now, the guarantee to get on a ballot does come with a cost in itself. And that's something that some candidates choose to eat that cost, but that's something that not everyone's able to, and also that we should be out there making it clear we're having to eat these costs, or we're having to take on an expense to do this, and people need to know that, and people will be happy to help when they know that those things are going on.
Great. Okay, we got through the questions that were in chat. Does anyone else have a question for Becca? Oh, we have a question that says, what's the largest waste of money when you are doing appeals?
In appeals, the largest waste of money. I mean, I would say probably this is getting kind of away from appeals specifically, unless I'm reading the question wrong, because I don't know. Like, you're not wasting money sending out appeals, because appeals are free. You're sending out emails, so it shouldn't be costing you anything to do that. As far as what you'd be spending that money on, that's going to be different for each candidate. I would say if you're spending a lot of money, maybe on a website or something that really should just be clear, get to the point information. If you're trying to, do something super special and state of the art or something like that, that could be a waste of money when really the most important thing is getting people information. But I'm not sure if that's answering the question. So if I didn't understand that properly, please give me more context and I'll try to do a better job.
Let's see, we'll do these 2 questions and then we're going to be ending it because we've gone a little over time, but that's fine because we had a lot of good information and a lot of good questions. How often is too often for an email appeal?
Oh, that's a good question. So we typically will kind of have a once a week cadence of scheduled emails that are going to go out, but then we'll have additional ones when it's appropriate. So when something really pertinent happens, when there's something that's very on topic for the Libertarian Party to make a statement on, or to be involved in the conversation somehow, or something big happens with a state that we're having an immediate need that has come up with ballot access or a legal battle or something like that, then we're definitely going to add a second one for the week. So I would say that one a week is a good place to start, but then don't be afraid if something comes up and you want to get on it quickly. Don't wait until the next week to send one out. Get it out while that is fresh on people's mind. If you're getting to doing 3 or 4 a week, I think you're probably going to find that people are maybe going to start spamming you. So I think 1 to 2 a week is a safe place to be, though.
Okay, last question is, in your experience, what type of pitches have gotten donors, especially but not limited to big donors, to risk their money on third-party candidates in a 3-way race?
So again, I've been doing this mostly through just the last year and some change. So it was an election year, presidential election year. The biggest thing that I saw without a doubt that people were willing to open up their wallets for was ballot access, was the opportunity to have the Libertarian Party candidate on every single ballot. And so converting that into a candidate at the state or local level, I would focus probably on that element of giving people a choice, on not being stuck with the status quo of there really are so few people out there who are happy with their options, so few. And so if you can make the pitch really about not just your ability to show up and be on the ballot, but to give people the confidence that a third party candidate really is here, is willing to put in the time and the work, and is a viable candidate, I think that's really where the money is going to come from.
Okay, and I think we're going to wrap that up. I want to thank you very much, Becca. This was fantastic. We will get this up onto YouTube and get this archived. Really appreciate it. Hang in there in Texas. Are you still at a friend's house?
I am. We are. So actually, my house apparently has power back, but we still don't have water. So we'll see if that stays. There have been rolling blackouts for most people, but ours has just been gone for 3 days. So we are expecting a freeze again tonight and tomorrow night, and then we're supposed to be in the 70s next week. So I don't even know. But for now, I have beautiful friends who have a home and are letting me stay. So it's great.
Well, fantastic. Stay safe, and thank you very much. And thank you to all of our attendees. We really appreciate it, and good luck to all of our candidates and campaign teams.
Thanks, everyone.